So this is actually one of Bryson's heads. You know, I literally this was my last head I had standing at Worlds.
Now, how many heads did you start with?
30. Went through.
So you started with 30 heads.
Bryson went through 2, and I went through 27.
All right, here with 2-time world long drive champion, Kyle Berkshire. What's going on, Kyle?
Not much. I think we're about to hit some balls, and I think you guys are gonna be hitting some drives. I'm gonna be hitting some long irons.
Yeah, I don't, let's not talk about that. Let's first talk about the gear in your bag.
Yes.
You know, everybody knows you for your incredible distance off the tee, but you actually played golf in college.
University of North Texas.
So I feel like we got to go through the bag.
I think it's only fair.
Let's see what you got. I definitely want to see some of these big sticks right here. One of them that I know that you used to win the long drive.
It was the last one I had in reserve. I've hit it a few times now as my kind of last club I had in reserve, but we'll go through that in the end. I guess we'll just go through the wedges first and work our way up.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think that'd be awesome.
Yes.
So, you know, I've been messing around with different wedge lofts right now. I'm sticking with, so 62, 58, 54, 48. I've also been messing around with 60, 56, 52, 48. This is 44 degree pitching wedge, so the gapping is about 4 to 6 degrees total.
Which is kind of where you want to be for like most pros. Just kind of gives you like those tight gaps where you don't have to hit really those tweener shots.
Well, it's kind of a white whale for me because at my speed, gapping is a tremendous challenge.
I'm sure it is.
We've kind of stuck with a 4 degree gap throughout the bag. So as we go through, you know, I look at these clubs not as necessarily like a 9 iron. I see this as a 40 degree club, you know, 36, 32. I learned this from Camilo Villegas because I played with him at the Bears Club about 1.5 years ago, and I went through his bag with him, and he actually showed me how his clubs were labeled with degrees, not the number of the iron, which is genius because you can have a strong iron, a weak iron. That's really all it is a lofted club. It's not an, you know, so I've always bought into that big time, you know, so I always try to stay privy to my, like the loft, the clubs, and I'll actually have them checked periodically because at my speed, I can actually bend those lofts if I hit it to the ground a lot. So like, for example.
Do you make any like manipulations at all, or do you have to have them do anything to the grinds on your wedges?
So sometimes, yeah, I mean, we're gonna be messing around with adding a little more bounce to some of these clubs because I found that, you know, when I'm shipping around the greens, sometimes I would like a little more bounce. I feel like sometimes, you know, especially these more lofted clubs, they tend to dig a little bit more than I'd like.
Yeah.
But like, for example, with grainy conditions, like this is a very grainy course, I would actually probably stick with something like this and go a little more stabby. And if it's a little more of a benign grain course with, you know, bent grass, it's probably better to use bounce and go a little flatter with the bottom of the swing. In that case, I might do something with a little more of a different grind, a little bit different bounce.
Yeah.
But again, you know, we're just now starting to work through that because, you know, we just finished the World Long Drive season. This is kind of my opportunity in the winter to get good at golf, see where things go.
Actually play some golf instead of just hitting.
Yeah, I actually did play a little bit of golf throughout the summer. Competitively, you know, nothing crazy because again, you know, it's really hard to get super into it when you're doing long drive every couple weeks. But you know, I was able to put up some pretty decent scores. And yeah, I mean, to your point, you know, this is my 8 iron here, and this is a club I hit most of the time. You know, because if I'm working on something, you know, one of the things I've learned from Will Zalatoris, you know, he's a phenomenal player. You know, one of the things I really buy into, if you're trying to make a swing change, make really slow repetitions of that swing. And so I like the 8 iron because it's a pretty middle of the road club for my bag. So, and I've had to bend this back and forth more times than I can remember to count because the loft will move on this a lot if.
Is it just because you're just at the speeds that you're going?
Because I'll swing an 8 iron about 110 miles an hour, you know, so at that
big
speed.
Deal.
Yeah, and I mean, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, how can you manage spin, stuff like that? Right. One of the things I'll do is I'll choke down sometimes to the steel so that I can still swing at the same, and you can see how much extra club is down there. What that'll actually do, you lose roughly 1.5 mile an hour club speed per inch of club being shorter, and all you're really doing, technically it's the same club, but the effective length of the club now is about 3 inches shorter. So you're going to be swinging it 6 miles an hour slower roughly. So it allows me to kind of swing a little bit, you know, slower without necessarily messing up my tempo. Yeah. People say, oh, well, why don't you just swing slower? You know, why don't you just swing like, you know, with less effort? Well, your tempo starts getting messed up. You know, I have an ingrained tempo that I have to stick to. And then we work into our longer clubs here again.
So you're in cavity backs all throughout the set.
Yes.
Have you always been a cavity back guy?
Yes, ever since I was 6 years old, had my first set of cavity backs, and all through, you know, high school, college golf, I've been pretty big on it. You know, this is kind of you can see here a little bit of difference in shaft. So I'll take the 3
so
iron.
I saw your X1
Yes.
and like your wedges. What do you when you go into the irons?
Yeah, so these are X7s.
Oh, you're an X7. I was about to say,
Yeah.
you're such a strong guy that,
Yeah.
that you can actually handle that one.
And you can see, we've actually had to hard step these once as well. So hard stepping, you know, if people aren't familiar at home, hard stepping basically means, so as a club gets longer, you know, it has to be stronger to offset the length in the shaft, so it's the same flex. You're gonna actually take the next club up, that shaft, and put it in the club before it. So you'd be taking, I'm gonna make sure I get this right, you take the 5 iron, you put it in, I believe, the 6 iron shaft. So that's called a hard step. And you can have double hard step and you take the 4 iron and put it in a 6 iron shaft. I've had to do that as well. We've settled on a single hard step for now, and we kind of monitor it. You know, I'm probably gonna have a second set made up as well. So for super windy days, I might go with a double hard step setup. And this is kind of where you can see kind of a difference in setup. So 3 iron through pitching wedge, pretty much the same thing here. And see X700 now, we go into graphite. Once we get to the 2 iron, you can also notice a little bit of tape on the back there. That's lower to the CG, so that I'll spin it a little less, it'll run out a little more. And
so how many strips are you throwing on there? Is it just a single strip?
This is 2 strips, it's 7.5 grams. Okay. I go between 6 and 12, just depends on kind of how my swing feels. Sometimes I might go up to 15, you know, if I'm really spinning the crap out of it, if it's a very windy day and I want to slow my swing down a little bit. We're going to Ventus TX9 and HB shaft. And again, just to get a little more speed and a little more consistency, because I feel like when I get to a certain speed, these steel graphite just bend so much, it's hard to really be consistent. So I've gone to the Ventus, and the threshold hasn't been the club, but the speed at which I swing it. So between these 2 clubs, this is when I cross over into the 130 mile an hour club speed mark between this club and this club. I'll swing this in the mid to upper 120s. This is right at 130 to 132 in competition. And then this is probably, if we're being honest, now I know this might sound crazy as a long driver, but I'm a golf purist at heart. You know, I love the game. This is my favorite club in the bag, no question about it.
It's not a driver, it's...
No. Yeah. But I also feel like Cobra would agree. They're extremely proud of this club, because the biggest problem I've had my entire career, especially once I got to certain club speed, is obviously, you know, when you have this cavity back here, when you have, not a cavity back, when you have like, you know, a hollow club, it's gonna go further because there's more weight on it than there is, you know, with just the cavity back here. The problem is that it's gonna cave. I was gonna say, I'm kind of surprised that you have this club, because it does have that hollow cavity to it, so you're gonna have to do some different things. I know you worked really hard with Cobra. They did a tremendous job. It was a 5-month period of development. We needed, but I said, if you guys can figure out a way to put something like this in my hands, it would be huge. The insert is where the magic lies. So it can't be a foam insert like they typically have, because it's gonna be too brittle. It's not gonna hold up against the force. It can't be a metal insert necessarily, because it's gonna be too heavy and it's not gonna be properly balanced. So what they decided to go with was a foam insert but it was like, it's hard for me to describe, but it's like got metal infused into the foam. So it's kind of blended together. So it's a little bit of both properties.
Reinforce
and it's kind of
the face a little bit more?
Yes, it gives it just enough support where the face will hold up a little longer. I will typically switch these out every 3 to 4 weeks, which is a huge win for me, because typically these would last 15, 20 swings normally. This is good for probably 300 to 400 hits now, which is awesome.
What loft is that?
It's about 12 degrees. And we're
getting like 1 iron loft a little bit.
Yes, it's barely more loft than the driver. Not only that, but this thing behaves very much like a driver in the launch characteristics. It launches about 10 to 15 degrees, spin rate in the high 2000s, ball speed right at upper to mid 190s. You know, I had it measured in a tournament, and obviously you have more adrenaline in a tournament, right at 200. When I was doing an appearance during this tournament a couple weeks before Worlds, so I was in the middle of my prep. My club speed with this was registered at 139 miles an hour. Ball speed, upper 190s, and it's an absolute rocket. And again,
I saw you hit it 303 yards carry.
Yes.
That's just insane.
And that's why it's such a massive weapon, because, you know, I have the ability with an iron to hit it 300 yards on the tee. So it gives you a lot more options. And now, well, actually, no, I got one more club. So this is a sick putter. So
I think I've seen that.
It stands for study in kinematics. So,
a buddy of yours I know is a big fan of that one.
Maybe you guys might be familiar with him. His first name's Bryson.
Bryson, yeah.
So,
I think everybody knows him.
Yeah, you know, custom design. I've worked with him a lot.
Show the soul on this. This is awesome.
They did that little, the little silhouette of me holding.
When you're the world long drive champion, you get the belt. That's
cool.
That's a pretty awesome flex right there.
And so the DLT here stands for descending loft technology, which is basically as the putter face goes up, the loft is adjusted. So if you hit it high in the face, it's going to launch it down, so it won't loft up. And if you hit it low in the face, it'll give it enough loft to get up over that depression the ball's sitting in. And you know, I've always found I struggle a lot with my shorter putts because I'll get in my head and I'll do something like that with my wrists. And so what I'd like to do is when I have a short putt, you know, and Bryson taught me this, he said, use tension to your advantage. So what he means by that, so I'll put it in against my forearm and get my grip. I like to wrap my ring finger, my pointer finger under this grip right here. You can actually
just really like lock it in there on the bottom?
Yeah, it just gives me kind of that feel of locking the connection to the putter. And then here's the kind of secret. I take the palm on my right hand and I push extremely firmly into it. And so what happens, it's, you know, especially when I have like a really short putt that I just need to make a good stroke on to make it, that it's so locked in. You can literally see the white of my...
So to say, yeah.
That's how firm it is, because what happens though is now your wrists literally can't rotate. You can't rotate your wrists because they're so locked in. And that's kind of what and then when you have longer putts, you can be a little softer with it so you still feel. Right. But that's what, you know, Bryce taught me, to use tension to my advantage. And it's really made my putting surprisingly pretty good.
And you've got an LAGP shaft on here, I should mention, just kind of like Bryson.
Really nice shaft.
Multi-material putter shafts have like blown up here in the last year. I mean, we're seeing all kinds of guys out on tour.
Well, Bryson used an LAG shaft at Worlds. And he made it final 8, you know? And now we'll go into what I'm sure you guys were really wanting to see. So this is my play driver.
So what do you mean by play driver?
So it's the driver I'll use when I'm on the golf course and trying to shoot a score. It's 45 inches, and you can see some tape here. This is basically to fight a hook. So when you put tape on one side, the weight will cause it to rotate with the weight. So with it being on this side, it's going to encourage the face staying open, and I want to play a fade with my play driver. So I'll face the camera so you guys can really see what I'm talking about. I want the ball starting this way with a fade, so that way I know two things. I know the ball is going to start in one direction, I know it's going to move when it's in the air in one direction, and that allows me to give myself a little more room for error on certain holes. I can play away from trouble. I can make sure my misses are in spots I can recover from. I really believe that the biggest difference between PGA pros and top amateurs and even just good golfers in general is they miss in spots that they can still escape from, and then they do escape from them. And I think that's why people sometimes, they're obviously phenomenal hitters, but there's not a lot of moments, I feel like, where you see a shot and you're like, wow, I can't do that. Especially if you're a top hitter. I think a top golfer, I think a lot of people, it's kind of very nuanced. You don't really see it as an obvious, in your face, this is why they're that good. I believe it's because they're just good at scrambling and missing in the right spots, you know, so. So
what loft are you using on this? You have 45?
So this is currently 4 degrees.
Okay.
You know, and we'll mess around with different lofts, different settings.
45 at 4 degrees.
Yep.
What a world.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see actually my tee marks here. I like to hit, I'll show you up close. So I like to hit it towards the toe here so that I can have a predictable, you know, reaction on the club face. And, you know, it's a really great head. I'll swing this. I have a 2X Patterson shaft in here. And I swing it about 140 to 142 miles an hour on the golf course in that neighborhood. And, you know, I'm just trying to play a pull fade, get it started online. My main goal is just keep it in play. And I typically won't plot a driver unless I have a lot of room to work with, because, you know, with my 1-iron, you know, already going over 300 yards, it's kind of, I don't really use driver unless there's just such an obvious advantage. The hole's so massively wide.
So you're wearing this one out during the course
I'll
of the
hit
round.
1-iron off the tee 80% of the time. Okay. You know, but if there's a really long par 5 that I can, you know, there's room on either side, I will let this go. The reality is, at over 140 miles an hour, and Bryson will test this, there's really, physically, the physics of it, it's just so hard to have control at that speed to ensure that you won't hit it far enough offline to be in serious trouble, that you kind of have to compromise a little bit. However, I will say that when you do hit it straight, which can be often, it's just that 1 out of 10, you're kind of at that speed destined to have 1 or 2 shots go pretty offline out of 10. But when you do have those shots on those holes where there's plenty of room to miss, and you do square it up and you hit a good shot, I mean, it's an instant half a shot gained, which is a massive weapon. So I will typically use driver 2 to 3 times on a golf course. A course like Torrey Pines, probably more like 6 or 7.
But I'm sure most golfers would think, well, for sure, he's world long drive champion. He's using driver on every
I'm a very
hole.
tactical person.
Yeah,
I think people, I feel
love
like,
it.
you know, again, as I said, I'm a golf guy. I started golfing when I was 2 years old. You know, I always take pride in trying to play the best golf I can. I don't want to just suck at short game. I really love working on my short game. You know, I just wish people would understand how good those guys are. It's people that are on tour. If people that aren't on tour, it's not because they suck at golf. It's because they're not the top 150 in a planet where there's 200 million people playing.
Right.
You know, so you can still be elite with your short game and still not be on the tour. And people would, and the other assumption they make is that I'm hitting driver in the middle of the fairway every time I play. No, I'm hitting these clubs.
Because you're a robot.
Yeah, I'm hitting these clubs, you know, and these are much more close, laying back to where normal people play.
Yeah.
So then it's a much more even match. If I took a drop in the fairway where I would typically drive in the middle of the fairway, I think I would do very well. You know, I think my short game would actually support a really elite level of playing, you know, because I played about a +2 handicap in that neighborhood. So kind of gives you an idea. I work into the long drive clubs here. So this is actually one of Bryson's heads. You know, I literally this was my last head I had standing at Worlds.
Now, how many heads did you start with?
30. Went through.
So you started with 30 heads.
Bryson went through 2 and I went through 27.
Okay.
And we had 1 left.
Yeah, but your speed was a little bit different than everybody else's.
But Bryson was in the 146 to 148 range, and I was swinging between about 155 to 158, and I had a couple of 159.
I mean, those are numbers that have never been seen.
No.
In the world long drive circuit.
Personal, yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe how fast I was, and it was honestly a problem because we had to adjust. Throughout prep, I had a few swings in the upper 150s, but nothing that sustained. Yeah. So we had to make adjustments. You know, we had to completely change our game plan and just play for these heads to be blown up because there was nothing any of us could do. You know, and so, you know, this particular head is, you know, it's 3.5 degrees stamped on there. You know, and this one, again, this one is trying to hit fades. You can see the tape on here, a little more of a wide body. Bryson was trying to hit fades at Worlds, so this was actually one of his heads. And so he was playing a fade. So that's his head.
And that's at 48, and so is this one?
Yes. Okay. And this is the last surviving head from the batch at Worlds.
Now, are you gonna, because of it's the last surviving head, do you keep it as like a, or do you not care? Like the fact that it helped?
I've already put hits on it, so I mean, you know, and you can actually see here, we've stamped out the CT, so 230 CT. For those that aren't familiar, the CT limit is 256, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and we do have to abide by CT standards in long drive. And so the reason this face is shaved,
check out this face.
Yeah,
I mean, this is crazy.
So these faces start at 215 CT, so this face has been shaved to make it a bit faster. So now it starts at 230 CT. The problem we were running into though was with these faces being shaved to 230 so that they would start at 230 CT, which is not crazy fast if we're being honest. Most tour players have CTs in the upper 230s, probably low 240s. So this is still a slower head than most heads on tour. Even then, these heads were still blowing up. And I feel like Cobra was the only company that was actually equipped to handle this. And Ben Showman, the head rep at Cobra out there, did a phenomenal job of keeping me in a good rhythm with the heads. He was swapping them out, doing everything he had to. My long drive coach, Bobby Peterson, did a phenomenal job of it as well. It was a team effort because the speeds we were producing, we weren't ready for. But my team did a tremendous job. And yeah, this is the last one standing. And if you can imagine, just imagine, you know, 30 heads strewn out here, and all those were shredded through, and this is what we got left here. But yeah, and you know, the characteristics of the shaft, you know, this is actually a 238 CPM shaft, and CPM stands for cycles per minute. So cycles per minute, all you got to know about that is the higher that number is, the firmer the shaft. So 290 CPM is an extremely stiff 4X flex shaft. This is right around regular flex, 235, 240 CPM.
Because you're still looking for some whip.
Yes.
With that shaft.
It's completely different from this one, because if you guys remember, I said this was a 2X, so this is a regular flex. Not only is this a regular flex, it's 3 inches longer, so it's gonna play even lighter than that. So just to give you guys an idea, I'm gonna put the equal amount of pressure on both these heads, and you guys can actually see how much each one bends. So this is a lot more flexible, and the reason is this is a completely different mindset than my long drive, my play swing. So in long drive, you know, I'll actually do it from this way so you guys can see me down the line. I wanna start it right and work it with a draw with minimal spin. So what I'm actually doing I'm getting way inside, and I'm letting the shaft release the toe. And you'll notice there's no lead tape on the toe. I'm gonna let this toe rotate a ton. And it's gonna do one of two things. It's gonna produce a snap hook, or it's gonna produce a draw that starts right at my target line and works a little bit right to left. And as long as I'm hitting the draw 50% of the time, I don't care about the other 50% with snap hooking, because our misses, the quality of our misses in long drive do not matter, as long as we're hitting monster shots, you know, after that. So that's really what matters with that. And then just to give you guys another, you know, just to show you guys can see the difference with the play driver. The play driver, as you can see, we got the lead tape. So we're trying to have that toe hold off its rotation. And this time, it's completely different. Stiffer shaft, and I am holding off the shaft and rotating my body, and I'm teeing it up much further up in my stance so I can hit a pull that fades back into the fairway. I would probably hit 50% of fairways with this club, just as I would with this shot. The difference is the quality of a miss. The quality of misses with this club are substantially better than the quality of misses with that. The only difference is that will go about 10 yards further, which is huge in long drive, but in golf, that's not enough to make up for the misses that we'll have to deal with. So that's kind of the science and differences, you know, behind the two sports and the two clubs.
Well, all the science that and the work that you guys have been putting in has certainly paid off.
Yeah.
Paid off with another win at the World Long Drive.
It's the only way to stay on top. I mean, these guys get better every year. You know, the bar keeps getting raised, and that's the only way you can keep getting better. You know, and stay on top is you just got to keep evolving and keep getting better and keep learning, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. We've done it twice now, and you know, I think we can do it a few more times.
Kyle, thanks for taking me through your bag.
Absolutely, thank you. Thanks for having me.